Hello, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you once again to our live webinar series for 2021 about the opportunities and challenges of going digital. Today, I have with me, my guest is Susan Woodfine from Praxar Technologies. And Susan is a professional in the technology and academic environment. And today we'll be talking about the impact of technology in the academic world and on the students' learning experience. And Susan is also an expert in business game simulation, online business game simulation, and this is what we will be talking about during the session. So welcome, Susan, and thank you for being here. Please, now I will just give you a few minutes to introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Susan Woodfine, and I'm based in Eastern Quebec. Praxar is a Rimouski-based education technology firm, and we're talking to you at, I think we're at minus 25 or something this morning in Eastern Quebec, so it's cold.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's not that cold here in Nova Scotia where we are broadcasting from. I think it is like -8 or -9 this morning. So I think we are much better than where you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I am originally from Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah, I'm from a small town, Antigonish, and when I'm talking to partners and clients and they're like, where's Rimouski? So many people haven't heard of it. I always say, well, if you follow hockey, Sidney Crosby, who's from Nova Scotia, used to live in Rimouski and play for the Oceanic hockey team before he was drafted to the NHL. So that usually puts us on the map.
Oh, wow. This is how people would know where you are from, right?
Yeah. Well, now Praxar too, but
yes, of course.
Sidney Crosby is a big selling point. Yeah.
That's great. So Susan, just before we start the discussion, I just want to make sure that everybody here who is following us live on Zoom or on our Facebook feed, you can put questions or ask us questions on the chat anytime you want, and we'll try to answer. So I want just to make sure that everybody knows about that. Also, what I want to make sure is that I want to thank today our sponsors. Agora Office Space is an office space where they are giving us their studio over here in Bedford, Nova Scotia. And this is where we are broadcasting every week. And our strategic partner, the Chartered Institute of Marketing Management of Ontario, where I am a member of this institute, and I am also the Chief Strategy Officer. And I am sure that they are also following us live. So having said this, I want to go back a little bit, Susan, and ask you just a question that is generic. In your opinion, as a professional, you are a business development director, you are the academic liaison with the academic environment. How would you say that technology is impacting the education industry these days?
I think one of our really big selling points, if you will, about Praxar is that, you know, we work in education technology, and I would say that we are, even before COVID, if we, you know, jump on that subject, we were changing and hoping to change the landscape of education with the presence of technology in the class.
Okay. You know, because I've been also talking to many different, I would say, professors or academic chairs or program directors, and they like and they don't like technology at the same time, right? So can you just tell us a little bit, what do you think are the main challenges that are really like stopping any academic institution of embracing this technology, you know, without having any doubts or without having any questions?
I think when it comes to instructors or coordinators, that we're looking at it, they'll all, especially because we work with business profs, we specialize in, we call it more today serious games or pedagogical simulations for business students. But that whole idea of gamification is super important to have some element of that in the classroom. And I think when we're starting to speak with a prof, we tread very carefully on there's pedagogy and how they want to teach, and we don't want to step on their toes. And I always say, you know, we're never there to replace the prof, but I think the biggest challenge is how comfortable is a prof with technology. And that's usually our biggest challenge. And it's also the fact that I think a lot of people underestimate the role of a prof. They spend a lot of time with the students. Most profs will spend a lot of time in preparation. So we're coming in and they're curious and they want it, but at the same time, it's going to be revamping what they're already doing. So my key always is we're looking for a champion of technology. We're looking for somebody who's curious, and there's the young profs, but you know, I've worked with older profs. You know, older, I better be careful, but I mean, in their 50s, like
more
myself.
Experienced.
Yeah, experience. Thank you, Saj. Those instructors, it's really the attitude. If they want to shake things up in a really positive way, and we've had profs that are in their 60s that have come on board to use the technology, because our job is that I know, and that's the reason I'm with the company. I really believe in what we do and how we work. But we have a good product. But if we don't take care of our profs, if we don't deliver good service, we're not in business. So that part is super important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Susan, because, you know, I've been also through my company, I've been running many business game simulations, but mainly not here in Canada, but in the United States. And I really saw a big difference in terms of how it is handled, right? In the US, probably it's more flexible. But what I found, which is really important, is that the professors and the academic chairs are trying to find a solution that is not bringing more work on their desk, but is trying to really take off this burden, right, of their shoulders of administering and handling all this. So if now we're going to talk more about the game simulation and the business game simulation, before we go into the technicalities, let me ask you a question. Why a business game simulation is important? What do you think it is bringing to the classroom?
First of all, and you know, even in my trainings, I say this, that I've got, you know, 2 kids that are in their 20s, and I have one who loves to follow the fine print and who reads the fine print, and the other is really not interested in doing that and pursuing a different career than, for example, an academic chemin from ABC. So this generation, we're talking about a digital generation. And I remember a couple of years ago, even our company has been up and running. The brains behind Praxar is Luc Desaulniers. And I also explained the reason we're in Rimouski is because Luc Desaulniers is a former professor of management and strategy at UQAM, the Université du Québec à Rimouski. And so this is why we're positioned here. And what's actually just a side note there, what's fun is that when I'm talking to partners, when I'm talking to profs, and that we're dealing in Quebec, we're dealing with English Canada, we're opening up markets in English Canada, and we're dealing with Europe. We've been working a little bit all over the world. We're starting to have interest, so that's really good. When Luc started designing simulations way back in 2003, so it's almost 20 years ago where he started playing around with simulations, and I consider him, many people do, really a pioneer in simulation learning. So I've seen the evolution of our platform, and what I'm going back to is in 2000 and one of our second editions, we would give a PDF to the prof to give to the students to prepare to come onto our platform. Well, part of our process is, and as we evolve, we work really closely with profs. They give us feedback as we evolve, as we make changes. And one of the things that came back, the prof said, Susan, they're not reading. So but they're reading, they're learning in a different way. So that PDF that we were giving to students 5+, 10+ years ago, that doesn't work anymore. Yes. So we've had to adjust something in a really interactive formula. So we've used the whole interactivity with students. The other thing that they get is it's technology in the classroom. It's experiential. There's a very much a hands-on, there's a hands-on component with the students. It's also realistic in that we really push the scripting, we really push the role playing in the simulation in the virtual world. And so the students have to like step up and do a bit of role playing. So they're and that really helps with the engagement in the class. I think it's impossible for an instructor to go in today as they did in the past when I was a student and lecture for 3 hours. Yeah. Students just don't connect.
I totally agree with you, Susan, because now we are dealing with what we want to call in terms, even if it is postgraduate or graduate, with generation X, Y, and Z, right? So, and this generation is very well known that they don't like to read a lot in terms of documentation. They are more, they were born with the device in their hands, right? So yeah. They are more tactile. They want to swipe, they want to go up and down, they want to press buttons, and even the millennials are also somehow like this. And this is extremely important. What you said is how you were able to adapt to change and to understand the needs of the classroom. And this is how today's students are really learning. And I believe that this is just the start about how the change is coming to the classroom.
And excuse me, Mark, and the other thing too is we still put a lot, like when you're asking before about like the challenges with the profs and stuff like that, one of the first things I say is, we're not here to replace the prof. And as much as for a simulation, we also call our simulation, it's integrated. It's not a simulate. So quite often I'll say there is a bit of a commitment for you up front to learn the platform. And that's our job in getting the prof ready into, like, from a pedagogy standpoint, how to use it. And one of the things we like to promote is that it's a very flexible platform in that it can be used in a regular face-to-face, which is sort of non-existent right now, or the hybrid setup, or the distance education, which online learning is, it's exploded. It's taken off. But we're not there to replace the teacher. If a prof says, oh, I want something really quick to replace it, I'll be like, then we probably aren't the solution for you, because I don't want, especially our software, there's the difference between us and a textbook is you have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. Well, in our simulations, it's what you call an integrated approach. So we're throwing HR at them, we're throwing finance at them, we're throwing operations. So it's integrated. We're throwing all of those ideas to the students at once. And so there's a bit of a learning curve, but we also push the experiential component where they're learning by doing. And it's okay, for example, in this environment to make mistakes. They've come into a company, it's up and running for 2 years. It's not yet profitable. What are you going to do to change it? So there's also that hands-on experience that students, especially with the COVID reality, they're not getting. So where are they going to practice these skills? Where are they going to complement what they've learned with the lectures? It's even more important. But I always say too that the simulation is as good as the prof in terms of, like, a question of preparation.
Yes, of course. I totally agree with you that the simulation or any technology that is introduced to a classroom is not to replace the professor or the faculty. At the contrary, we are here to give them enablers, right, to enhance the experience in the classroom. And I think this is what is really needed and missing in today's classrooms, because we are changing in terms of, as you said, like, the audience is not anymore the older generation, and this is what is extremely important. And out of my experience with running business game simulations for major universities in the United States, they love the fact that we are helping them to
Yeah.
run the simulation, remove lots of the, if you want, administrative burden around the simulation. However, they love the interaction that is happening in the classroom. And as you said, it's so interactive, and it's a safe environment to make mistakes. And this is how you prepare your students to the real active and fierce and competitive business life.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because you're also a consultant and you're touching on many just different aspects, challenges, or contracts with different partners, and that our focus is academic. So we right now, because of Luc Desaulnier's past in strategy and management, we focus primarily on management simulations, marketing and business and entrepreneurship. And our team now, that's another beautiful story. What I love is that that our team, first of all, we're based in Rimouski. We're not in Seattle, we're not in Toronto, we're not in Montreal. And people are like, comment ça se fait? How is it that this small IT firm is based in Rimouski? And even we're starting to we're starting to shine, and sort of we're slowly getting on the map in terms of our presence. Our main competitors are in the States.
Yes.
So that's for us a really positive news story. And what we also do a lot of, follow up with profs. We do market research into what are the demands, what are the needs out there that we can contribute in this education. So now we're working on an accounting simulation, which the way that we're designing it, it's going to be very unique, very intuitive, state-of-the-art technology with that. But the other aspect that's coming up is the demand for the corporate market. And that's something that is a bit new to us, and we're starting to experiment, because the demand for the corporate market to be training, not just because of COVID, but there's a demand for high-end software simulations in the corporate market. And we've been working with a firm in Spain who's interested in looking at a platform for finance and in banking. So the demand, for example, for corporate, there's the timing is very good for us.
That's really amazing, Susan, because I think we can announce something today that Praxar and Strategy Up, we are now partners in this, right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to bring it to the corporate environment and as well to the academic environment through our network. Because, as Strategy Up, also we do lots of corporate training, we do executive training, and we did many leadership training courses before. And now, I will not announce a lot, but something is really coming soon in March, and we are going to integrate the business game simulation in one of our corporate training sessions. And of course, we're going to try to push again in the academic environment, which we're doing. And actually, this is a great bridge, right, of bringing a solution that was designed in the academic environment, that has proven to be successful in this environment, and now bringing it to the business world. As you said, COVID-19 has pushed us to work a lot online, and now we need to bring this extra edge, right? Other than having, the boring meetings or the boring anyway, behind the screen training. And this is where the learning experience will probably grow exponentially in a classroom, whether is it an academic classroom or it is a corporate training classroom.
Yeah, no, and that's super exciting for us, because we're getting a sense that the demand is there. If you read a lot, which you do, is there's many companies. The other thing too is my husband works as a marine biologist, and I have to admit, that since March, we've been extremely thankful that we both have our jobs, because unfortunately, I read the news, I watch the news every evening, and there's a lot of really hard stories out there, people who've impacted. I would say one of the proud stories for Praxar is that, when everything shut down in March, we definitely had a bit of an adjustment because everybody will say, oh, you know, an education technology firm, booming. Well, it's not, it wasn't as easy, but that transition in terms of the mindset with our team was, but the other challenges when you were saying, you know, what are the challenges with profs? Well, today when I talk to you, a lot of instructors and students are pretty zoomed out. They're pretty platformed out because on a given day, I could easily have 4 or 5 virtual Google Meets or Teams or whatever. So there's that reality. But the proud thing of our company is that, you know, we were in the office, bang, and the next day we all had to go home because we were shutting down. Well, that didn't really change. I mean, the developers continue to do their work. We continue to do our work. I'm really glad that there's a beautiful startup mindset at Praxar, but with that, we have many people wearing many different hats. And when I look back on, you know, what kind of marketing did we do since I've been there in the last couple of years, we had to sort of focus on growth and sales. And I'm really glad that we didn't pursue too much marketing because it would have all had to change anyway because of COVID. And we've been able to adapt in a very agile kind of way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and this is actually interesting. Just to do a small segue, right? And that you're talking that you had to adapt, and it's about, you know, change in mindset. Let me just ask you a question. What brought you to business game simulation? I from when we were discussing, you were very far from this industry, right?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm surprised my boss hired me.
Maybe because you are great, Susan. I don't know.
I'm a lovely person, and I'm from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
I tell you. No, it's really funny because I'm in Rimouski. As I said, we've been here now for 20 years, and we're here by choice. My background, my education is journalism. I did my undergrad at the Université de Montréal in French, and then I did a master's in journalism, and I had 15 plus years with CBC Radio. And most of my focus was radio documentaries. But there were a lot of cuts in this area, and I knew that if I was going to stay in journalism, you know, what was it that I wanted or whatever. But I was also at a point where I wanted to do something different. And I was thinking about going back to school and maybe doing an MBA. And by chance, I had met Luc Desaulniers, and I did some consulting for him and ended up going with him to Toronto for a presentation with a publishing firm. And then basically I stayed on for a little bit because I was finishing up some documentary work, a film on climate change in Eastern Quebec. And Luke said, why don't you just stay with us? It's going to be like doing an MBA. And I was like, because I didn't really have any business background except, you know, I can write, I can communicate, I can network. I love people. And I think what I found out is I love the education sector. It's a clientele where you know, I'm working with people like you. I'm working with professors, instructors, teachers, coordinators, deans, or whatever. And it's a really nice place to be. And I really believe that we're making, you know, when you're with the CBC, it's public radio. You feel that you're telling stories about important issues that perhaps would not get told in other places. And so with education, I feel that there's a connection there because we're changing the landscape of education with business simulations, with serious games. And my dream as well is that when the company gets bigger, that, you know, we can have a strong philanthropy component to it. That's just my dream on the side. But already we're working with students, we're working with instructors. So it's a career change, it's a shift, but it's something that maybe for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. But for us, for me, it makes total sense. I feel good. And the other thing too is every day I'm learning. So I've been with this company for 7 years now, and it's flown by, and we've gone from 4 people, we're now 9 people with a handful of interns as well working with us. So I'm really lucky.
Yeah, you know, I totally understand you because now you are on a mission, right? Like when you are in the academic environment, it's really a mission rather than a job or a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I have the same feeling because when we did the business game simulation, and our biggest customer was the University of Houston in Texas in the United States. And we trained over the course of several semesters more than 2,000 students on business game simulation, right?
Yeah.
And every time we were talking about this, and I was seeing the result and the happiness in the eyes of the students,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
just
Yeah.
rewarding, right? When they are so engaged, they are entering or they are just waiting for the session to start because there is a business game simulation. The questions they were asking, it's like I really didn't expect such an engagement level, and the type of questions, the quality of the questions, right?
Yeah.
And I think this
Mark,
is
you
what
also, Mark, excuse me, you also set it up, I think, as a competition, right? So the,
yes, we set it up as a competition as well inside the classroom. So, we were, the classroom was very big. So we were lucky that to have in one class around hundreds of students. So we were able to split them into different groups. And the way we were doing, so they were competing against each others, and then we were giving them prizes at the end as well. Right?
nice.
So
Yeah.
we're giving the top three teams who were able to create the highest value for the business a prize. And the idea is that we want to take it even outside of the classroom and at some point create competition among universities,
Yeah.
right? It's not to show who is best, because honestly, we have lots of great universities in one area, but it's all about, this kind of giving an edge to the technology and showing that it works. And you know what? At the end of the day, we want it or we don't want it, when the students will go to the corporate life, it is so competitive, right? There is, yes, this company is better than the other company. Yes,
Yeah.
this company took higher market share, or this company has a better quality product, or this company has the best pricing. So you have the best in everything. And we're not here to compare universities, because at the end of the day, it's about the team skills and the team dynamics. And this is what we want to show, that life is not perfect. The business
Oh, yeah.
is not perfect, right? And the adoption and the acceptance rate was really amazing in terms of from the students and also from the professor side.
Yeah. Oh, and what's funny is that, you have profs who, we always make a joke that, the demanding profs, we want the demanding profs that are going to give us a hard time because we know that they're taking it really seriously. And an example of that is a prof will sort of go slowly when they use our platform for the first term.
Yeah.
And then we've had instructors where they've actually built their full course around the simulation. If a prof approaches us to see what we do and how we work, they're with us usually a minimum of 5, 6, 7 years, provided obviously we're delivering good service, that we're doing updates and whatever. And to me, the cherry on the Sunday is when a prof says he had a great session because of the simulation, or a prof will come back and say a lot of the testimonials, the surveys that came in, the best part they liked was the simulation. Or a prof said, I ran into a student that said, oh, remember that simulation that we did 1 or 2 years ago? That was super helpful. And this person has gone on to work in marketing or whatever. And there's we have a great presence in Ontario now with a lot of the colleges. And some of them, we now have created certificates so that they can give each student a certificate, or they've been able to get sponsorships. And at one point before COVID, they would go out for lunch with the winner of the team would be taken out for lunch with the team, with the coordinator or the dean of the program. So there's been a really fun momentum. And I always sort of say, it's what you put into it. If the prof, I always like to, not just because I think Praxar is great, but it can't be something where it's an aside. It's a robust tool that you have to make it front and center. For some profs will use it midway through a term because they are convinced that they have to get some theory into the students, one approach. And then there's other instructors who say to us, I actually really like using the simulation up front because it completely rattles the cage. and they're like, hey, A, I don't know everything. B, maybe I should listen to my instructor a little bit more in his lectures, and C, maybe I will pick up that textbook that I bought. So it's a great complement to so many things. It's
Oh,
a
yes.
win-win when it's used properly.
Of course, of course. And the most engaging thing is that which I found when, usually when you use technology and when you use technology for the first time, you have what you call user experience mistakes, right? A
Yeah.
student is clicking wrongly on a button or not understanding exactly what they need to do. And since they are a team, maybe one person will submit a round and actually they didn't yet agree to submit a round, and then and what I found it is that when they were doing something by mistake, it's not like the students say, oh, okay, let's see next round. No, they were calling us, sending us email, please, can you roll back? Can you help us? We want to change the parameter. We want to make sure that we are really taking the right decision. And this is what I loved, is that even the students were
Engagement,
taking
right?
it so seriously,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they were like, really? Oh no, I want to make profit. No, this is not the price which we wanted to put. Someone did it by mistake. And of course, we
Yeah,
were
that's
not rolling back, because we wanted also, as part of the role of the experience, is that in business, when you do mistakes, sometimes with your customer, and when you go public, you cannot take it back. You need to understand now, what are my next steps to improve and to in a way remove this negative effect which I did before. And this
yeah.
is why in a simulation we are, or personally, I don't like to be very flexible in terms of stopping a simulation, deleting or whatever, or resetting or rolling back. Because if it's a simulation, it's real life. In real life, if not, now with you, we are live, right? If I do a mistake with you right now, I cannot say, hey, listen, Susan, just 1 second, I want to delete what I said.
No, I just hang up on you.
Exactly. and
I'm
and the
just going to say
market
bye.
and the market would see it, and then it's my role to see how I need to clean up the mess. And this is also what we're bringing to the classroom, is that, listen, when we do, although it is a business game simulation, but we're simulating a real life experience, so you have to live up to it and make sure that you're making the right decision.
Yeah, and it's funny because maybe because I consider myself a bit of a mother hen, but when I do the training with the profs, I pick up pretty quickly in the conversation what kind of profs they are, if they're going to play hardball with the students, or if they're going to be a little bit gentle, and maybe they're going to let that class rewind because they weren't happy with the decision. So we've sort of covered our bases, because part of the new design that we launched this year is we have actually what's called a practice zone.
Yeah.
So the students, I always call them kids, they can go into the practice zone and they can practice before the real simulation begins. And the other thing too is, I do like what you said about the error. It's okay to make mistakes, and B, you're in an environment where it's safe. We're encouraging you to take risks. You're not going to lose your job. You may be booted off the team. No, I'm just kidding. But you may have pay a price for it. But our simulation, just in case there's some people who don't know, they come into a virtual company. So one round is 1 year in the life of the company. To make all of those decisions, it's about 45 minutes to 1 hour. Then they've got a bit of analysis. But usually, as they move forward, they do about 7 or 8. And if there's really good momentum, some classes, some companies will go all the way to the 10 rounds that are available, because they have good engagement and they really want to keep at it. So that's fun. But it's just the fact that as bit by bit, as they go forward, like what you're saying, they make the mistakes, they learn from their mistakes, and they move on. And it's not just about the share value. I always say that if they have presentations, virtual presentations, that even if they didn't do well in the share value aspect of the company, but they have to give a presentation, which is like TED Talk phenomenal, they can pick up points there. So there's lots of ways that success is nurtured in the simulation. So that's fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's all about the overall experience,
Yeah.
right? And also, another thing which I think was interesting through my experience of running business game simulations for the academic environment is when students, we're putting them randomly together, right? So we're selecting names randomly together. And then some students were coming and saying, no, I want to be with X, I want to be with Y. And then all what we were saying is that in real life, when you go and get a job, you don't select your colleagues,
Yeah.
right? You have to work with whoever the business is throwing at you. And
Yeah.
then if you cannot work out the relationships and you cannot work out the dynamics of the team, then you know what? Then maybe you need to move to another level of training and then come and take a leadership training. What we
Yeah.
call, because we do leadership and team management training as well, and then we include the business game simulation in it. And this is how we are completing the experience. And then the students at some point were, as much as they were frustrated the first minute when they said, I don't want, but when we explained this to them, I see a smile on their face, like they have an aha moment, right? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you know what?
Absolutely.
You're right.
Yeah. And we push that further now, and profs are much more open to that now. A few years back, they were a little bit reserved about it, but we have what's called a 360 evaluation, a peer evaluation, and that's part of that role playing, that discussion. The students don't get the results, but now what I push, especially because of online and COVID, is don't use the peer evaluation just at the end. I have profs that are using it almost every year or every other year. So a peer evaluation is they get to evaluate themselves, they get to evaluate their team and their teammates.
Yeah.
And that way the prof gets a heads up that sabaras, there's a little bit of tension in this section. And then in some, at the university level where they're using it, they actually, and in colleges, some have the right to throw that kid, that student, out of the company because they're not delivering.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
I would definitely encourage an instructor not to do that for first year students, because that could completely rattle the cage.
Yeah.
But it's that role playing of, okay, buddy, you're not delivering. What do we do about it? What are you telling us? And then if they have to have a meeting with their chair, which is the prof.
Mm-hmm.
And then in some cases, depending how much they want to push the role, a prof can say, I am no longer your professor, your instructor. I'm a consultant. And so if you want me to help you, you're going to pay me. So there's a section on the platform where they can actually tap in. And if I think that the advice that I gave you is worth $400, then I can take $400 out of their company, and that will show up on their income statement. So quite often for first year courses or even experienced students like third year, they may not use it the first time the prof is using the simulation, but there's ways to maximize the platform. And that's one of the reasons we're so present. I mean, there's so much information. Everything is there for the student and the prof to succeed, but we make sure that we work with instructors throughout the session. So it depends how much they want to push the role playing. We've got that for you if that's what you want.
That's really great. And I remember when actually you were training me on your platform, we were talking as well about how we can create what we call external events, like bring a bonus to a company or like make them have an excess loss or something, right? So you can change a little bit the statu quo if you want, which is like in real life. Like look at what happened during COVID. We were all like going in terms of like normal business, right? Business as usual. And then all of a sudden, March came, 2020, and an abrupt stop in business, right? And then this could happen, and the simulation is there also to show what could happen in such situations, which is really amazing.
Yeah, and it's funny because if you use that as an example, Mark, when companies, for example, right now are not doing well, like if you've got 12 companies that are competing in the classroom, and it's been a little bit crazy, but one of the things I can't get over, there's a lot in the news right now about, students coping, the mental health component with, working online, and even the best students are sometimes struggling with that. Well, there's also the story of the instructors. Like before Christmas, I was in contact with a lot of profs, and it hasn't been easy. Like hats off to them, because they're accommodating, and you can tell that teaching is a vocation as well, where, a lot of the students today, especially in a lot of our colleges and universities, we have a very strong international presence. Well, a lot of those students weren't able to make it back to Canada, but they still want to take the course. And, you know, some are in India, some are in China, Singapore, France, and they're, you know, and they're in, so they're adapting, they're really accommodating a lot of the students and working around that. Plus, from an instructor sense, even if we have the champion savvy technology profs, they've had to learn so much new technology in the last couple of months that it's been really, really hard on them. But I was just going to go back to the students that, for example, for whatever reason, they're struggling and they don't have a good performance. Well, the prof can go in and give them some extra money so that they don't go bankrupt. And I just say, well, you know, let's just call it a COVID subsidy, because they're being handed out. So they get a COVID subsidy to help them survive and not be bankrupt, which is a real issue today.
Exactly. And this is what's happening to all businesses, right? And, you know, and also you mentioned something about the professors, and I really feel their pain, because before COVID, you know, we all know how a class or a program is prepared. The lesson plans were not adapted to virtual or online courses, right? And then all of a sudden, these professors, not only they had to deliver their courses, but they had at the same time to adapt them and to rewrite part of the lessons plan to the lesson plans, to the online environment, to the online delivery, right? How to take assignments, how to grade assignments, how to deliver a chapter, how to engage.
Some of them did not have technology support.
Exactly, you know, and we know in some, even here in Canada, in some areas, you might not have a great internet connection, right? And then you don't have a high bandwidth. And then how are you going to do assignments? And not to say a bigger problem is probably in countries that are what we call emerging countries, where definitely internet is a challenge, and then how they are learning. Right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, now we need to tell them, take a business game simulation. It will be like, seriously? Let's wait a little bit. And this is why I think an entity like you, and with a partnership like us, where we can really try to take off the shoulders of the professors all the technical setup, and then actually for them it will be business as usual. And anyway, the business game simulation, as you said, it could be either a whole program around it, or it could be just a module within the course. It could be just a one-day thing, or a one-week thing, or a 2 weeks thing over the semester, or it could be the whole course around it. And this is the beauty of it. This is the flexibility of technology that is here to help us rather than to stop us from moving forward.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm in constant contact with instructors, quite over, primarily right now in the U.S., in Canada, and Europe, and some are just like completely rattled, and they're like, we can't introduce anything new to instructors right now because they're completely overwhelmed. So there is that waiting. There's some profs that jumped on board, and you know, because as I said, before Christmas and even now, I was talking to instructors who were easily having 12, 13, 14-hour days because of, you know, doing it and being conscientious and delivering their courses. It was not easy. So with instructors now, the good news for our partnership is that we've been up and running for quite a few years. The good news before COVID was that we did hit the 10,000 mark, where we had 10,000 students in one academic year using our software students. So that we have our financial year, we start in the fall with the fall session, the winter session, and then the spring and summer. So we will have growth, but once again, the timing has to be right for an instructor. And I would never, if a prof said, well, I'm completely overwhelmed, I'm like, then you know what, let me set you up with a demo, take a look at it, contact us when you want to learn more, because the timing, like anything, has to be right. Yeah. So I think the reason you reached out to us was because of the Ontario organization that you work with, and you were working with, I think, a company in Italy.
Yes.
And it's like, why not go with Canada and give us a chance? So
exactly, you know,
the rest is history.
Yeah, and actually, you really said it well. Previously, we had a partner out of Europe, out of Italy, and they really were amazing. I always say that they were by our side, with the great level of professionalism. But again, when we were talking about COVID and this economic crisis, one of the things which we thought about is that we need to support local, right? We are all in it together, and we need to help our community. And when I talk local, I talk about the Canada brand. Here I am not talking about, although we are in Nova Scotia, but we're not saying, why not only working with companies from Nova Scotia, but the idea is that we need to have the Canada brand with us. And this is what we're trying to do. And this is why actually we reached out, and I am so happy that we were able to find common grounds to see how we can take this together here in Canada, but also in international markets, because Strategy Up, we have international reach as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely, I totally agree with you. And this is one of the things that COVID brought to the businesses, is again, to change, to rethink their partnerships, their alliances. And actually, at the beginning of the pandemic, I did a webinar about this, and I spoke about it in March of 2020, almost 1 year ago, that COVID-19 is going to force us to rethink about our alliances and partnerships,
Oh,
so that we can all survive in a harsh economic crisis.
yeah. I think just personally and talking to so many people, COVID has been a reset for values,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yes.
And whether it be achat local, like buying locally, just how you interact with people. It's you don't wish COVID on any universe or whatever, but it has been a reality check as to
Yeah.
what's important. And as I said, there's still a lot of really hard stories out there of people not surviving, but there are some good some good sides that have come out of that.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Susan, we still have around like 10, 12 minutes to talk about the impact of technology and the business game simulation. So I want to go a little bit more narrower on our topic, and I want to talk directly about the product which you have, or the service which you are offering. So you spoke very briefly, but I want to talk to our audience and explain to them a little bit what kind of simulations you have. You said that you have three that which are live now and one that is in the making. So tell us a little bit, what are these four simulation
Yeah,
topics, and what they are bringing in terms of value, or skills to the classroom or to the corporate environment, when we are doing professional executive training and team management, and even team building activities.
yeah. So we have one simulation that takes place in the kayak manufacturing, and that's very popular with students. So we have what's called uh, we call it, actually, instead of an intro to business, we call it business and entrepreneurship. And in that particular simulation, we have a standard version and an advanced version. So you could either have college students or first year university students using the standard version. So when we say the kayak manufacturing, they come onto our platform. We don't assume that because you're students and you're hip, yo, or a corporate person taking the course, that they're going to know necessarily a lot about the kayak manufacturing. Yeah. So we explain what the industry is. We explain a little bit about the company. And in there, that would be for a course like business fundamentals, or students with no business background. They're going to learn a bit about what operations, finance, marketing, and HR. And so there would be a total of about 50 business decisions that would be taken in that. And that's going to be a virtual company where you're coming in to be the director to run the company. And it's going to be how a business works. So that's actually interested even from a corporate setting. We don't do a lot of corporate. It's something that we're explaining. That would be somebody who maybe is training to I don't know, it could be an esthetician, it could be somebody who's an accountant setting up their own business, it could be anything. what does it take to learn a business? And so there, it's going to be it would be for like a business fundamentals. The advanced version of that would have more than, I believe, like 100 decisions to be making. And that course, I would always push. Obviously, a prof can do what they want. We would say, don't use the advanced version with first-year courses, first-year students. They need to have a bit of accounting, a bit of marketing under their belt. That would be used for students going in, for example, to an MBA, where they would have no business experience. They would have that. And then we have a management simulation, which takes part in the golf course industry. What's super interesting about that is it would be a little bit more advanced. It's not just about how a business works. It's much more complex in that there's 3 profit centers. So once again, we talk about the golf course industry. We talk about how it works, how the concepts we're using in this simulation. So it's also, that would be the principles of management. And so you would have 3 profit centers in this small golf course. You would have a pro shop, you would have a restaurant, and you have the golf course. So that's going to be the role of the manager. That's going to be, how does your company succeed? You have to juggle a lot. And at the end of the day, your company will only do well if you invest, if you take chances, but it's also going to be impact on your decisions as a manager. So it's much more complex. The other thing, once again, we listen, and that works very well in corporate settings as well, as does the marketing plus, as does the business and entrepreneurship kayak plus. That's what Luke has done in some of the corporate trainings. What's fun about golf is it appeals to women and men because there's a lot of women golfers. They also like the marketing component with the restaurant and with the pro shop. So that's been very popular as well. And there's that whole team dynamic and the role playing that can be really maximized. And then we have a marketing simulation, which depending, once again, we can say it's for first year students or corporate with no business experience. That's interesting. So that takes place in the video game industry. And the key is the 4 Ps. It's the product life cycle. So those are basics that we would be reviewing. And then we're in development for an accounting simulation, and that's focusing on the accounting cycle. That's going to be much more gamification going on there. It's going to be much more of a game, because what I always found funny is we did the research for the accounting when we were working with profs and that, and I was just like, everybody thinks that accounting is dry, and for some people it is, but at the same time, the profs we talked to were just so passionate. And I was like, shit, if I had a prof like that, I could count. Like if I had a prof like that way back when, it was, they were just so passionate and they made accounting exciting. So we're doing that. And then we're in development, starting with the strategy simulation as well. And that will be a very heavy multimedia component as the accounting. So there's lots of offering, and it's flexible with, different settings as well. It's fun. It's a serious game.
Wow, you're keeping yourself very busy, I would say, lately, right?
Yeah, it's good news. It's good news here. We're busy, and we've also, I think what's important too when you're talking about your leadership courses is we're really careful about the people we've hired in the last while. Like we have a great team, a great dynamic that, even in COVID, there's a really good energy here. So
Yes, of course. And one of the major things actually, which I think the COVID situation gave us is when business really slowed down or even stopped abruptly over time, it gave us lots of time to rethink our business, to pivot a little bit and to see how we can improve and how we can move forward. And I think most of the technology advancement and the new ideas and features probably came just because we had time to stop, think, and do. Whereas before we were just firefighting and going, day to day business. And I think this is, if I want to look at the positive aspect, there is definitely no positive aspect about COVID, but at least on the business side, that it gave us time to, as you said, reassess priorities, understand better the value of the business, and really think what we really want to do so that we can succeed. And the implementation phase came during this, what I call the dead period, if you want, of the business cycle.
Yeah, and I think I don't know what the numbers were. If it was something like, I had a number like 1.3 billion students since COVID have been sent home. around the world, something like that. 1.2, 1.3 billion students are not in the classroom, at least in the beginning. Some are going back or whatever. But the whole point is that we have shaken the landscape, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we're changing our priorities as to how to deliver education. There's an upside to some online learning, or the whole digital. What was fun for us, Mark, was that we had slated a lot of instructors that were supposed to be in class. Well, they could still use our software because when they went home, it was a flexible platform for that. So we have a few good stories, with COVID. We're thankful for that.
Very good, very good. Susan, this discussion is really amazing, but unfortunately, we are reaching to the end of our session. We are also almost reaching to the top of the hour. And I really want to thank you for your time. I really want you cannot know how much I appreciate the information and the knowledge which you shared with us today and with our audience. So I just want to give you 1 minute if you have like final thoughts about the technology in learning, and if you have anything else you want to say for our audience before we end up this session.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me, Mark, to take part. It's we believe that we're a good news story with COVID, in that we're making a distance we're making a difference when it comes to education and learning. And we've, as I said before, we've been very lucky. We're working hard at spreading the word that Serious Games is a good complement to whatever learning is going on in the classroom or outside the classroom.
Very good. So thank you once again, Susan, and I hope that our audience enjoyed the discussion. And if anyone has any question about the impact of technology in the education industry, whether is it academic or professional education, please reach out to Susan or to myself, and we will be more than happy to guide you and to give you any kind of information which we can share. And we really hope that we'll be able to run the simulations in your universities or colleges, and as well in your business environment for your teams and for the management team. So with this, Susan, we are reaching to the end of our session. I want to thank our audience for their attention and for being with us. I always remind everyone that we have a weekly live webinar. Our next webinar would be next week on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Atlantic time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Every week we have a great guest. All my guests, I really love them. They give us a wealth of information. So please, if you are interested in joining, go to our website, www.mystrategyhub.com, and you will find all the information there, and you can register. So with this, I am going to end today the session. And thank you so much for everything and for everyone who was with us here.